Tribe to debut this music video. And this was an incredibly empowering experience for all of us. We made space for our full selves and we shared it with others, affirming one another, affirming ourselves. And I woke up the next day with a simple and yet sacred knowledge in my heart that I am enough. Oh, but the ego, as egos tend to do, chimed in with a million reasons why I, Amanda Jean Weatherspoon alone, could not possibly be enough. All the ways that I don't measure up, all my faults, all my shortcomings. So rather than challenge the ego, thus creating an internal melodrama, I instead sat with this one challenge. If I can't truly believe I'm enough, what if I lived my life as if I were enough? In my heart, I know that I am, but until my head catches up, perhaps I could live as such until it does. Fake it till you make it. Now, the really neat thing about being in progressive faith spaces is that we get to redefine and reimagine the holy and the sacred. And something I love to do is to find the sacred and the holy in the mundane, because the mundane is where we live most of our lives. The mundane is also where most of our values are enhanced or diminished. What we do in the mundane points to our deepest truth much more than how we are in extraordinary times. And also, we have a direct and easy access to the mundane. Cleaning our houses, walking the dog, getting ready in the morning, being in the car or doing laundry, dealing with conflict or even disappointment. Or even higher stakes mundane, like navigating powerlessness or unjust systems, dealing with bullies masquerading as presidents who hold our government hostage in favor of racist and xenophobic practices, or just dealing with one another. We all have access to this mundane. So the question is, how do we transform the mundane into the miraculous? So I did something different this New Year's that I've never done before. I went on a silent meditation yoga retreat. I was there between Christmas and New Year's. I rang in the new year in meditation and prayer. And now those of you who've done this before, you know there are many benefits to something like this. And it's pretty hard to not be transformed after several days of intentional silence and meditation and a variety of yoga. And also likewise, it's pretty easy to discard the reality of one's everyday life, creating goals and standards that are only easy in the confines of a yoga retreat, or on a vacation, or a trip, or even a Sunday morning. And I found myself on that retreat creating goals and standards that relied far too much on an inner stillness and presence that I had only after days and days of meditations and early bedtimes and a variety of yoga methods. And friends, let me tell you that I am not doing this in my day-to-day life. I'm doing good if I can get a 10-minute breathing meditation on any given day. And while that is great in and of itself, it's not all that transcendent. And that's okay, because I don't live at a silent yoga retreat, just like we don't live on mountaintops or in monasteries. Nadia Bolz-Weber is the lead pastor at the House for All Sinners and Saints in Denver, Colorado. Her ministry centers this idea of finding the holy in the brokenness. And in her book, Accidental Saints, she writes, "It has been my experience that what makes us saints isn't our ability to be saintly, but rather God's ability to work through sinners." She goes on to share, "I have come to realize that all the saints I have known have been accidental ones. People who inadvertently stumbled into redemption like they were looking for something else at the time." And in the text, she explains to one of her parishioners that what we celebrate in the saints is not their piety or perfection, but that we believe in a God that gets redemptive and holy things done in this world through, of all things, human beings, all of whom are flawed. All of whom are flawed. That phrase sits heavily on me each time I interact with it, because even though we all know that, we seem to hold one another to a higher standard of flawlessness than any of us could ever achieve on our own. And in this, I believe, we trade in our human experience of wonderful, blessed failure for the appearance of achievement and perfection. So the question becomes, what do we trade for that expectation of perfection from ourselves and from one another? For me, authenticity is often the first attribute on the chopping block. If I can't be flawed, I can't be real. And if I need to provide perfection, there's some part of myself that will have to hide in order to even attempt perfection, which ultimately will not happen anyway. If I always have to have the most polished and perfected response, then eventually I'll just stop talking. Not to listen, but out of self-protection. And to stifle oneself isn't always noble. It's fear. And so it is also in community. When we expect perfection in behavior and performance, we risk authentic and lasting connection and trust. We are not machines, and we can't program one another to function as we each would see fit. And how could we even do that? We all need a variety of things from each other in community. Some of us, we need connection. Some need accountability. And some folks need a place to discover who they are. And some of us just need comfort. And all of those needs require a certain amount of risk and an indefinite amount of uncertainty. There are variables for days because each of us are complex creatures. To grow as a community, we have to make space for imperfection and flaws and failure, and hardest of all, disappointment. And we will disappoint one another because we are each of us flawed. Friends, I will disappoint you because I am flawed. And there's no amount of faking it that will make that statement any less true. But that's not my goal. When I choose to live as if, I'm choosing to integrate and weave my flaws into the rich and complex story of who I am, and in that to recognize fully that yes, I am enough. I don't have to be perfect or to have figured it all out, but that to understand that my flaws are a part of me, and if I let them, they have the capacity to reveal my deepest truth. So this is where we come back around to the whole fake it till you make it philosophy. Now, when I talk about fake it till you make it, I'm not talking about fake confidence or posturing or popularity. It's not about deceit or superficiality. It's about getting out of our own way. It's about centering ourselves in our deepest values and truths and leading with our hearts rather than with our heads. When I'm at the yoga retreat and I'm setting lofty goals for myself, the issue is not that I'm biting off more than I can chew or that I'm not capable of achieving something. It's that I'm creating goals out of thin air rather than rooting myself in my core values and core truths, which include my flaws, and then going from there. When I decide to live as if I were enough after International Women's Day, that came from one of my core values, which is that each of us has inherent worth and dignity, that we are all enough. That's a value that's heart-centered. When we did that smiling exercise earlier that some of you might have done before, we tricked our body into mimicking happiness, or rather, we let our bodies take over to produce what we need to feel joy. The simple act of smiling, even in the absence of something to smile about, triggers our bodies at a neurochemical level. Same with laughter. It's not fake laughter, it's laughter. It may be without a purpose, but it does what it's supposed to do. It's a function of the body and not necessarily always of the mind. And our minds can create a lot of clutter. And just like with that junk drawer or closet that most of us have in our homes that we try to organize and categorize but never quite works, and we often just tend to let it be as it is, probably adding more to it if anything. And when we need something new, we know it's probably in this junk drawer or junk closet or junk room, but rather than looking through it, we just go buy something new. That's our minds. That's our thoughts. That's our psyches. Our bodies also hold on to things too. Folks who work in trauma or physical therapy know this, but our bodies have a natural healing process. Our bodies have a very present and easy wisdom. So when we lead from the physical or the spiritual heart, we're allowing for that simple and present wisdom to guide and direct us, rather than go through all the clutter of the mind, maybe adding to it or even taking away from it or otherwise. But we move away from that clutter altogether. And finally, friends, we have to say yes. Yes to our heart's wisdom. Yes to those pieces of truth hidden underneath the narratives and the experiences and the clutter. Yes to those flaws that reveal so much beauty in ourselves. In the book Year of Yes, Shonda Rhimes, famed showrunner responsible for primetime hits like How to Get Away with Murder or Scandal or Grey's Anatomy, which is on its 110th season. She chronicles her year of saying yes to everything presented to her, especially the stuff that scares her the most. Opportunities such as prestigious speaking events and appearances, but also personal struggles as well. She describes how saying yes to this year of transformation changed and reshaped her entire life. Now, was she always confident in her yes? Was she always comfortable? Was she always steady? Well, obviously, of course not. When you're that vulnerable, everything is a risk. But the risk is worth it. And in her willingness to lean into her truth in a way that saved her very life. In the text, she writes, yes to everything scary. Yes to everything that takes me out of my comfort zone. Yes to everything that feels like it might be crazy. Yes to everything that feels out of character. Yes to everything that feels goofy. Yes to everything. Everything. Say yes. Yes. Speak and speak now. Yes. I say yes. When I decided to live as if I were enough, more than faking it, I was saying yes to my own worth. It's not really about faking anything. It's about allowing ourselves to become more fully who we always and already were. So perhaps it's not fake it till you make it. It's allow it in order to become it. May it always be so. Blessed be. join hands with those around you, or maybe elbows or pinkies. Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our special light will kindle one flame. As we leave this place today, may we hold the seeds of love in our hearts, sprinkling it with joy, allowing it to grow in the garden of our lives. May it be so.